Support for Carolina Business Review provided by Grant Thornton. Operating in more than 100 countries, our tax, audit, and advisory professionals specialize in helping companies unlock their growth potential. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of South Carolina, where healthcare is changing for the better. Find out how at ahealthysc.tv. And by Sonocco, a global manufacturer of consumer and industrial packaging products and provider of packaging services, with more than 300 operations in 35 countries.
Well, the debate about the age and the life expectancy of this economic expansion, by the way, no longer a recovery, and how much more growth we can expect is always interesting and always up for debate. Welcome again to the most widely watched program on Carolina business and public policy. Thank you for watching. Manufacturing and retail are among the most economically sensitive sectors. So, what are they saying about this post-recovery economy? Roger Schrum from manufacturing giant Sonocco and Andy Ellen from the North Carolina Retail Merchants Group will share their thoughts. And later on, one of the newest corporate citizens to the Carolinas, Metlife, and its EVP, Eric Steigerwalt, will join our discussion.
Major funding also by Novant Health, bringing you world-class technology, clinicians, and care when and where you need it. The Duke Endowment, a private foundation enriching communities in the Carolinas through higher education, healthcare, rural churches, and children's services. And by Blue Cross and Blue Shield of North Carolina. Who's responsible for rising healthcare costs? Join us and many others in a candid discussion at letstalkcost.com. On this edition of Carolina Business Review, Andy Ellen, President of the North Carolina Retail Merchants Association, Roger Schrum, Vice President of Investor Relations and Corporate Affairs at Sonocco, and special guest Eric Steigerwalt, Executive Vice President of Metlife's U.S. retail business. And now, here's Chris William.
Welcome to our program. Andy, welcome to the broadcast. Roger, good to have you back.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So you're both kind of on the edge of a helicopter blade when it comes to the economy. Roger, so we had, 2014 was probably better than most thought, and when they go back to revised GDP, they're going to see that it was fairly strong. How are you feeling about 2015? What do you think?
Well, let me start with 2014 because it really was a tale of two halves. And the first half, of course, was really started slow because of the strong winter weather that we had. But the second half was rocking and really had a very strong second half. Had record third and fourth quarters for Sonocco. That means manufacturing was doing well, but it also means that the consumer was doing well because a lot of our packaging was going through those stores. But I will tell you, as we go into the first part of the year, it's like any start of the year. You got a little bit more wind at our back, so to speak. So we feel very optimistic about 2015. You're going to see it in the first quarter. It's probably going to be a little muted, but as we get through the year, we think we're pretty upbeat about the year.
Yeah, Andy, do you buy that description? Does that sound right?
Very much so. I think Roger's correct. The first part of the year was rocky. The second part of the year was really good. The Christmas season for the retail community was very good, up I think 4.1% over the last year, according to the National Retail Federation. I think that was in tune to gas prices being lower, people having more money in their pocket, having some optimism, the housing market starting to recover. And from the retail sector, when the housing market recovers, we sell more couches, more electronics, more draperies, that sort of thing. So that really helped. There was a little bit of fear about the healthcare costs, going into the first part of this year, but I think we're looking for a very strong year going forward. And I think our sales tax numbers in North Carolina and in South Carolina are demonstrating that the economy had a good surge in the fourth quarter.
Do you think, we haven't had a meaningful, intentional rise in interest rates by the Fed, and there's some talk that might happen. Roger, could that take folks by surprise since rates have been virtually zero, or the cost of money has been very cheap for a very long time? Could this surprise folks?
Well, again, I think it's all incremental of what we're talking about. We're not talking about significant increases of interest rates, but any increase would be more than what we've ever had over the past several years. So even if we do have some, I don't think it'll be enough to dampen the economic outlook for either manufacturing or retail. And particularly here in South Carolina, I think and North Carolina, you can see that low interest rates have been helpful for the economy, but at the same time, because we've got help, say, lower gasoline prices and other stimulus within the economy, I don't think interest rates are really going to have a big impact.
Specific to North Carolina, Andy, I want to read this. Family Dollar, Dollar Tree doing a merger, or have done it maybe by the time that this airs. Harris Teeter and Kroger have done a deal. Staples and Office Depot. There's a lot of mergers and acquisitions going on in the retail sector. How does that change the calculus for you and your members?
It changes the calculus a lot on the real estate sector. Because you will see sort of an over-retail where those had duplicate stores in certain markets, which will put pressure on the real estate side, I think, for retail going forward. It may also lower a little bit of consumer choice in some of those markets. But I think on the retail sector, it also means people are going to have to work extra hard to keep those customers and develop a new brand loyalty with a previous customer. You may have been shopping at a Dollar Tree or a Family Dollar, and now we're going to maybe shift you over into a Dollar Tree. You've seen some standalone with Harris Teeter and Kroger, not quite as much because they've let Harris Teeter run as a separate entity, for instance. Staples and in the Office Depot sector, again, trying to convert those customers and keep the ones that were the Office Depot and keep them as a Staples customer.
Yeah, and this is a little bit of a one-off. Do you think Harris Teeter, you think Kroger is going to have a tougher job converting that loyal HT customer to the new Kroger brand?
You know, what we keep hearing is that Harris Teeter will continue to operate just the way they are. They've got a great footprint here in this marketplace, and Kroger has sort of given them free rein to continue to expand here in North and South Carolina, Tennessee, Northern Virginia. So from all we hear, I think you'll continue to see that major impact, a major footprint here in the Matthews area without necessarily a shift over to Kroger.
Roger, I'm going to be careful about not telling you something you know all too well, but I want to ask you a question. With a projected 2 million jobs to fill in manufacturing in South Carolina over the next decade, and there's a lot of talk and some heat being felt about this workforce skills gap, that means there aren't qualified folks to go in jobs that maybe Sonocco or some of your contemporaries have. With that kind of, issue of that many folks, isn't that an issue? Isn't that a critical issue going forward, trying to figure out how to get kids coming out of school that are going to fill the jobs that you have?
Well, it absolutely is, and it's not only with existing industry like Sonocco, it's with the many new jobs that are coming into the Carolinas with new manufacturing that's coming our way. You've got to have those skilled positions in place, and the concern on an existing manufacturer is we have an aging workforce, and as that turnover occurs, is there someone there that's going to be able to step up with the skills necessary to take those jobs? And of course, for economic development purposes, are there enough skilled positions for those new jobs when they becoming open? So we're very concerned about it. We're working with the economic development sides. We're working with technical schools. We're working even with our high schools now to make sure that we start that process early on and make sure that kids know that there are good alternatives in manufacturing. For some reason, there have been years and years of stigma that I've got to get a 4-year college degree to make a decent wage. You can make extremely good money working in manufacturing, well above national averages, and with a lot having to get a 4-year degree. And so we're trying to work hard with the technical schools to set up those work keys, set up work skills that are specific, that allows for certifications in the areas that we need, whether it's welding, whether it's mechanization, automation, robotics, those types of things.
Yeah, but not to cut you off, and Andy, I'd like you to weigh in on this here. But how is it, when does it become punitive to economic development? And let's say it this way, when does maybe a third-party provider to Boeing say, we're not going to go to South Carolina, it could be good, we can't find the skills, we're not going to move?
Well, it's getting very close to that now. I believe that if we don't start bridging that gap, we're going to start penalizing ourselves because those jobs won't be able to be filled. And you can't just say, well, industry has to step up and start training its people that they hire. That's not really the answer. We've got to have a joint effort between manufacturers as well as the education side as well as the government side to make sure that we're all working together for one purpose, which is developing that skills gap.
Yeah, so Andy, how do you characterize the critical nature of this issue?
Well, you know, if you look at the retail industry, I think Business North Carolina just came out with the top 100 employers in North Carolina. 5 of the top 10 are retail companies. More than a third are either retail companies or wholesale companies that supply retailers or manufacturers directly tied to retail. We're trying to do a better job of giving or making sure that young kids, as they're entering high school, understand that there is a career path into the retail sector, not just behind the store counter, but also in the legal department, in the marketing department, working in a distribution center. We see a transition from in some manufacturing areas where the person that may have been working in a manufacturing area, they may not be going into biotechnology, but they can drive a forklift and have a very good long-term path, career path, or they came out of the military. And we're focused very heavily on military for operations and logistics of trying to bring the folks that are coming back into North Carolina through the military bases and putting them back to work once they retire in one of those systems. The military folks are great people. I agree with Roger, you know, we have this stigma sometimes that you have to have the 4-year degree. The HVAC person, the welder, those sort of things are great career paths. And we want to, I think, use the community colleges, which is a great economic engine, to help train and focus on, okay, you're going to be bringing a call center for a retailer. How do we develop a call center program at that specific community college in that area? Or we're bringing a distribution center to rural North Carolina and Robeson County, for instance. How do we get those drivers trained for the forklift or to run the equipment in those distribution centers so that we do have a great infrastructure, which also allows us to recruit new companies like that into North Carolina and get them to come and provide great jobs?
Yeah, both good arguments, and I suspect the debate is far from being over. Guys, stay with us. Next week on this program, it's one of those companies that's hidden well in plain sight. It's a major manufacturer, billions in revenue, paper manufacturer called Domtar. The chief executive, John Williams, will be our guest on this program next week. And then in 2 weeks, there is never a shortage to talk about in healthcare. Medicaid, Medicare, all things around healthcare. We will be welcoming back on the program the chairman and CEO of one of the largest healthcare providers in the country, Michael Tarwater from Carolina's healthcare system. Will be here in 2 weeks. There's not much of an enigma to the brand of Metlife. It's certainly known as a venerated century-old plus insurer. $73 billion in 2014 revenue, 65,000 employees. But last year, the company made some serious headlines as one of the Carolina's largest corporate relocations, with about 2,600 jobs on 2 new campuses between Raleigh and Charlotte. It surprised and, of course, gladdened economic developers. As MetLife consolidates its U.S. power base here in our region, how will this newest corporate citizen affect and engage with the Carolinas? That's a good question. Joining us now is the president of the retail business for MetLife, which includes annuity, life, disability, property and casualty, along with the retail agency and third-party distribution network. We welcome Eric Steigerwalt. Eric, welcome.
Thank you, Chris. Happy to be here.
Yeah, good to have you here. Eric, you know, when it was announced that MetLife, when you were moving a substantial operation to the Carolinas, and you chose Raleigh and Charlotte, 2,600 people, this was a big deal for economic development. You know, we all debate about economic development. Are incentives good? Some folks will say you don't need them. What was it? What did it come down to that made you put a stake in the ground here?
We were in an interesting point. We were trying to, and have, I think over the last 3 years, transform this division. It's the largest division in MetLife, you know, 2.6 billion in after-tax earnings. So when you take on something like a transformation, you know, you've heard the line, right? If you want to change things, you have to change things. So we were looking to change a lot of things internally, almost disrupt a lot of things. And we were looking for somewhere that essentially was new for us. So we could have stayed in some of the places that we were previously. And of course, we're nationwide. Frankly, we have a global operation. Mm-hmm. The business I run is nationwide. And we were looking for a place that almost felt like it was created for us. And after a lot of research, we ended up in Charlotte and Raleigh. And very briefly, you know, in the Charlotte area, obviously it's a huge financial services center. That means a great talent pool for us, potential talent pool, which has turned into a fabulous talent pool for us. We were looking for a business-friendly climate, and we were also looking for, frankly, a great climate. We got both here as well. And then in the Raleigh-Cary area where we are, that's primarily IT-focused. And of course, you're well familiar with their track record up there. And we got, in one area, the best of both worlds. We're 2.5, 3 hours away from each other. It literally was like it was custom made for us.
Was it now that you've been here and you're really starting to consolidate and get more and more boots on the ground, if you will, what surprised you about the move you didn't expect? Good or bad?
Nothing bad. You know, I'm asked this question all the time, and I'm for, you see the smile on my face here. It's been better almost every step of the way than we could have hoped for. Now, we planned this out. We are planners, you know. Every single piece of this move was planned out, but the talent has exceeded our expectations. How easy it is to get in and out of frankly, both places that we're involved in has exceeded our expectations. The way the buildings here, for instance, in Charlotte, and then what we have in the Cary area, which was kind of, we broke ground on those buildings from scratch, were perfect for us. They were built here in the Charlotte area, the Ballantyne area of Charlotte, but nothing was done on any of the floors, so we could customize them from scratch, exactly the way we wanted them. I can only say everything I take a look at that I was most concerned about has exceeded our expectations.
You know, Roger, to give you a chance to answer a question here, it seems like that almost goes counter to what you both were talking about around the talent development, that it's hard to find it in your industry. I don't want to give you a leading question.
No, and I guess I would ask you that same question as well, is that, again, it gets back to the stigma I was talking about with regards to four-year college degrees, and of course, you're hiring IT people in Raleigh and others that may have a higher level of education, and you're probably hiring folks with college degrees, and of course our interests are those that have these critical skills. But you know, maybe talk a little bit about the training that you're having to do with the people that you are hiring. And it sounds like you're getting a great talent pool, which is fantastic, but I know you have to do some additional work with those folks. How much training and activity is involved with that?
You know, nothing beyond what we've done anywhere else around the country, for instance. Now again, in Raleigh-Cary, it is more IT focused, maybe IT/operations, okay? And the training that we're doing there is no different than we would do anywhere else. The jobs in Charlotte run the gamut. I mean, we have call center people, we have sales management, we have sales people, we have 140 advisors in North Carolina, South Carolina, lawyers, compliance people, finance people, you know, people who run various facets of marketing and product development. So the onboarding, we haven't found to be any different than what we would do other places. Now, we took it extremely seriously here because we were bringing so many people on. And you have to inculcate them into the ways of Metlife, not just their job. But it's really gone well here, and we haven't had to do anything extraordinary.
Fantastic.
I was just saying, Eric, first, thank you for being in North Carolina. We appreciate the jobs you brought in.
Thanks for having us.
I would be remiss if I didn't say that. And we hope some of the people you're training, some of our retail companies will use some of that talent pool as well, hopefully, down the road. What I was interested in was, in the days of Hugh McCall and those folks that were our corporate cheerleaders in North Carolina to bring people into North Carolina and get people to relocate here, how does North Carolina do a better job of re-engaging the companies that have relocated here to get other companies to come join them, to bring good paying jobs here, not just to the Raleigh-Charlotte market or the I-40, I-85 corridor, but also to eastern and western North Carolina? What can we do a better job of here in North Carolina as you look back on your experience in making the decision to come here?
Well, I can tell you an awful lot of people have been asking that question right up to the governor. And we've been involved when companies are thinking about moving here. Many of us, including I'm sure yourselves, have been involved in this. We tend to get the call most of the time, would you sit down with, you know, they always call it Project X. We never know who it is, right? And can you walk them through your experience with respect to both the research you did and then why here, and obviously then how is it working? You've got a lot of focus on economic development at the state legislature level in both states, frankly, right? And we've, you know, I've been involved in a lot of dialogues around this, right? Infrastructure is key, right? People ask me down by Ballantyne 485 there, you know, are you upset about all the construction work? No, I'm thrilled about the construction work. I would be upset if there was no construction work, right? They're trying to improve, you know, what we already have, which was reasonably planned out in many areas and you know, throughout both states. So one of my mantras is we can't forget about the people who are already here, because they are the natural cheerleaders to bring people who aren't here yet. And so we've got to make sure we're keeping up on infrastructure. Maybe one last thing I'll add is when we were doing our review to try to figure out where we looked at a lot of different places. And one of the critical factors we were looking for was infrastructure investment. Some places said, we're thinking about doing X. How long were you thinking about that? Well, for quite a while, but you've never done it. Other places, like here, we were thinking about doing X, we did it, now we're thinking about Y, and because of our track record, you probably can assume we're going to get it done.
You've been at MetLife for a long time now. You've got some DNA in what happened in 08 and 09 and the recovery. Fared better than most insurance companies, fared better than most financial services companies for that matter. There's a new foe on the horizon. Not so new, but maybe new in its level of attack, and that's cybersecurity. We've seen it with the target employee base, the target customer base. The state of South Carolina has been hacked, so on and so forth. Eric, how do you manage this risk? How do you really manage the risk to make shareholders, policyholders, employees feel good about it?
Well, I think it starts, and I'm sure it's the same in all of your businesses, you got to take it seriously. This can't be something that's off to the side. You've got to have serious people devoted 24 hours a day to this. Frankly, it's an interesting question for me only because I just had a briefing on this about a month ago, where I was walked through all the things that have occurred, and we have not had any serious issues, but what other companies have gone through, how we're dealing with that, how we go out and talk to, especially IT executives and people at those other companies when they'll share, here's what happened here, here's ideas we have going forward. We've got a lot of people devoted to this. We have a lot of customers, right? Close to 100 million. So for us, this has to be top of mind. And from the briefing I just got, that briefing was on the heels of a pretty long briefing for our board of directors. This is a serious issue for us, and we take it extremely seriously. And we're all talking about it. So maybe my last comment would be, this isn't something that we say, well, that's an IT issue. No, that's an issue for every one of us. When we're thinking strategically about our businesses, that's got to be a component. And so somebody in my job has got to be thinking, are we allocating the right amount of resources to that, and what kind of resources will that take going forward?
Yeah.
Chris, I was going to say on that point, I think we have this. Some customers have gotten numb sort of to the breaches and that sort of thing. But if you step back and think about it, if somebody goes in and robs a bank, we don't think of the bank as the criminal in that situation. In this case, the bad guys are going in and taking the information, and the business is doing all they can to try and prevent that. And we've got to continue to do a good job and be in partnership as businesses to make sure that we protect our consumers' information. On the credit card side, I think one of the things our industry is looking at is trying to move, like to Europe, to the chip and pin type situation. You go to the ATM at a bank and you have to put your code in. But if you go to the store, because of the way the system is currently set up, unlike in Europe, you sign for it. And so I think we need to go to eventually to the chip and pin as fast as we can to sort of take away some of the, making it easier on people to hack and obtain credit card information on our side.
Yeah, thank you. We've got about a minute left.
Sure, just real quick question. It's about your core business and how things are changing. And I guess one of the changes as well is you've got a whole new generation of people coming in looking at life insurance and millennials. How do you attract millennials, and I'm sure it has happened in every generation, how do you attract them to wanting to buy life insurance?
Not enough people buy life insurance. We know this. All the statistics tell you this. Over the years, the last couple of years, life insurance sales have even been down slightly or flattish, okay? And the outlook isn't for double-digit growth or anything. So it's complicated. One of the ways we do it is, we're focused on having teams of advisors.
And we got about 30 seconds.
Whether it's a formal team or whether it's people working in conjunction with each other, we focus on the parents, the breadwinner, where the money's coming from, and we've been spending more time educating them on what their kids need to know so that as they get older and get into their first job, it's something they might think about versus ignoring completely.
Come back and talk about the secret sauce in the sales process, please.
Happy to.
You know, I'm sitting here thinking, how do they do it? Anyway, thank you for being on the program, Eric. Thanks for talking so freely about how you got here and why you're still, you know.
My pleasure.
Right.
Thanks for having me.
Good to see you. Andy, welcome. Good to have you here.
Thank you very much for having me.
Always nice to have you here, Roger.
Thank you, Chris.
You bet. Until next week, I'm Chris William. Hope your weekend is good. Good night.
Major funding for Carolina Business Review was provided by the Duke Endowment, a private foundation enriching communities in the Carolinas through higher education, healthcare, rural churches, and children's services. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of North Carolina. Who's responsible for rising healthcare costs? Join us and many others in a candid discussion at letstalkcost.com. Grant Thornton, operating in more than 100 countries, our tax, audit, and advisory professionals specialize in helping companies unlock their growth potential. Novant Health, bringing you world-class technology, clinicians, and care when and where you need it. Sonocco, a global manufacturer of consumer and industrial packaging products and provider of packaging services, with more than 300 operations in 35 countries. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of South Carolina, where healthcare is changing for the better. Find out how at ahealthysc.tv. And by viewers like you. Thank you. Promotional consideration provided by Business North Carolina Magazine. For more information, visit carolinabusinessreview.org.